Nibiru, are you prepared? The term Planet X was coined by the astronomer Percival Lowell sometime around 1905 and 1908. It describes an unobserved planet that perturbs the orbit of a known planet. Perturbation is a deviation in a known planet's orbit. The planet X we are searching for is Neptune's perturber, which, like Neptune, orbits our Sunday. For this reason, Planet X is described in ancient wisdom and texts from around the world as Marduk, Frightener, Destroyer, Hercule-Abus and Nibiru. So is Planet X an internet hoax perpetrated by fear-mongering, clickbaiting prophet speakers as debunkers claim? There has to be more to it than that. There is, and it begins in 18th century Europe. The European search for Planet X 1781. On March 13, 1781, William Herschel discovered Uranus, making it the first planet discovered by telescope. Following its discovery, European astronomers turned their telescopes onto Uranus and observed perturbations in its orbit. This discovery will launch the search for Planet X. Neptune. If one had to choose the father of Planet X research, then it would have to be Alexis Bouvard, a French astronomer who observed the perturbations in the orbit of Uranus and attributed them to the existence of an unknown planet. The first Planet X. Unfortunately, he died before the existence of Neptune could be mathematically determined by French mathematician Urbain Le Verrier and British mathematician John Couch-Adams using Bouvard's observations. Verrier gets the official credit because he relayed his findings to John Gale at the Berlin Observatory. 5 days later, Neptune was observed by Gale on 23 September 1846. This made Neptune the first planet discovered by mathematical prediction. So Neptune was also the first Planet X to be discovered, but subsequent calculations based on the orbits of both Uranus and Neptune hinted at yet another Planet X well beyond the orbit of Neptune, and so the search resumed not in Europe but in America. The American search for Planet X, 1894. Lowell Observatory. The Lowell Observatory was established in 1894 in Flagstaff, Arizona. The home of meteorite creator by Percival Lawrence Lowell, an independent businessman, mathematician and astronomer. One reason he founded the observatory was to study the planet Mars and its canals. The other was to search for other objects in our solar system. Most particularly, Neptune's perturber, Planet X. A fact that revisionist historians downplay or paint over. Yet it was always Lowell's intention to find Planet X that led to the discovery of Pluto. Clyde Tombaugh. In 1929, the young astronomer Clyde W. Tombaugh, retained by the Lowell Observatory, was to carry on the search for Planet X. Then on February 18, 1930, he discovered Pluto, and at the time astronomers believed he had discovered Planet X, Neptune's perturber. Consistently, the subject of Planet X then languished for some time after Tombaugh's discovery. However, after the discovery of Pluto's moon Chiron in 1978, it was discovered that Pluto lacked the mass to be Neptune's perturber, as it's only 60 the size of our own moon. The search for Planet X was once again back on. It's also interesting to note that Pluto was later demoted to the status of a dwarf planet in 2006 by the International Astronomical Union. Emanuel Velikovsky. In 1950, Emanuel Velikovsky published Worlds in Collision, and he was viciously attacked by mainstream science even though he corresponded frequently with Albert Einstein. What generated this medieval response from modern science was the fact that he used ancient accounts to question the Darwinian theory of evolution with evidence of periodic cataclysms caused by large objects moving through the core of our solar system. Despite ruthless suppression, his work reopened the discussion of Planet X, and following that a steady stream on information merged both in mainstream science and the media. Pioneer 10. On March 3, 1972, NASA launched the Pioneer 10 spacecraft to explore the outer planets. However, according to government whistleblowers, its real purpose was to discover Planet X, or to at least narrow down the search field. An interesting aspect of Pioneer 10 is the gold anodized aluminium plaque designed by astronomer Carl Sagan should the spacecraft be found by extraterrestrials. At present, communication with Pioneer 10 is no longer possible. Zecharia Sitchin. Following the launch of Pioneer 10, the subject of Planet X would have languished again if it hadn't have been for Zecharia Sitchin, the author of The 12th Planet, first published in 1976. According to his translations of ancient cuneiform Sumerian texts, a race of beings living on a planet called Nibiru bioengineered early hominids on Earth to turn them into slaves to mine gold. Known as the Anunnaki, they lived on Nibiru, what we call Planet X today. The Sumerian account tells us Nibiru orbits our Sun every 3,600 years, often causing great cataclysms on Earth. Sitchin's theories and translations are corroborated by a text called the Calabrian Bible. According to Planet X researcher Greg Jenner in his book Planet X and the Calabrian Bible Connection, previous flybys of Nibiru resulted in the sinking of Atlantis, the Great Flood, and the 10 plagues of Exodus. Although Sitchin was constantly attacked and mocked by fundamentalists, the American government took his work seriously, and on January 25, 1983, NASA launched the infrared astronomical satellite IRIS. Its mission was to map the skies using infrared. According to NASA, IRIS was unable to complete its mission due to a failure of its supercooling system, and the data collected from the spacecraft was classified and never seen again. Again, government whistleblowers say this is a cover-up because NASA shut down IRIS after it imaged Planet X. Their accounts parallel an article published by the New York Times on January 30, 1983, shortly after the IRIS launch. Evidence assembled in recent years has led several groups of astronomers to renew their search for the 10th planet by devoting more time to visual observations. With the demotion of Pluto, Planet X can no longer be called the 10th planet, which is technically irrelevant. What is relevant is what IRIS imaged, and in a Victoria Advocate article published on June 14, 1988, NASA astronomer John D. Anderson was quoted as saying telemetry from Pioneer 10 indicated the existence of Planet X. What is relevant here is Dr. Anderson is a NASA scientist with one heck of a resume. What he says in that news article is powerful. He says there is an above 90% chance of Uranus and Neptune being disturbed, and his one candidate for that is Planet X. At this point, the government becomes much more interested in keeping attention closer to home. After all, if you can't see it, then it's not there. Thankfully, other minds had other notions. Dr. Robert Harrington, chief officer for the U.S. Naval Observatory, published in October 1988. His paper entitled The Location of Planet X in the Astronomical Journal. In an August 1990 television interview with Zecharia Sitchin, Harrington said that Pluto had been a satellite of Neptune that had been dislodged by Planet X, which he believed could sustain some form of life. He also showed Sitchin a diagram he had created approximating the location of Planet X. Following that interview, Harrington commissioned the construction of a special telescope for a Planet X sky survey in 1991. which was completed at the Black Birch Observatory in New Zealand. The New Zealand observations were made using Harrington's calculations and the results were sent to NASA. However, those films vanished and were never seen again, which leaves us with a big question: did Harrington find Planet X? In 1992, Sitchin produced a documentary called Are We Alone in the Universe, at the end of which Sitchin quotes a NASA press release from that same year saying the following: "Unexplained deviations in the orbits of both Uranus and Neptune point to a large outer solar system body of 4 to 8 Earth masses on a highly tilted orbit beyond 7 million miles from the Sun." This press release suggests Harrington did find Planet X in 1991, but the truth will never be known because before he could publish his findings he passed away from the onset of rapid esophageal cancer on January 23, 1993. With his New Zealand findings suppressed and having died before he could publish his findings, many believe he was assassinated. An obituary by Charles E. Horley of the U.S. Naval Observatory and said that late in his career Bob seemed quite skeptical of such an object. However, no other sources have come forward to corroborate Horley's claim. Consequently, Harrington's death was a shot at the dark that quickly silenced the Planet X topic both with the mainstream media and scientists alike. In a real sense, it was a veiled threat: tamper with this at the risk of your own career or perhaps even your life. In this regard, the obituary was highly effective. Nevertheless, there is an interesting question: Harrington built a specialized telescope for a U.S. Naval Observatory station in New Zealand. The mission was simple: to find Planet X. So then, and did they? Who knows? Because until NASA decides to declassify Harrington's observations, all I can say is where there's smoke there is fire. Summary. Now, if you're wondering to yourself if you should do some of your own planning and preparations for whatever may come, know this: and when the worst of it hits, it will not be brief. This will not be weeks or months. Rather, we are looking at several years. Perhaps longer than a decade. What this means is your supplies, no matter how well organized, will run out. What they do is buy you time to work something else out. To optimize that gift of time, gather knowledge now. After things run out, knowledge will help you to endure. In subsequent articles I will bring you up to speed on the last 17 years of Planet X and how I no longer believe it's a single planet but rather a group of planets and their moons orbiting a brown dwarf star that is the binary companion of our own Sunday. I will also give you useful information I like to call transition planning to help you stand the best chance of making it out the other side of this cataclysm alive.